The paradox of the self. You have traveled through many paradoxes: choice and prediction, the frozen moment of time, the brain in a tank, the ship of memory, the room of fear, the infinite hotel, the pleasure machine, the circus of choice, and the rearview mirror of regret. But looking back, they all seem to converge on a single point: the self, your very I. So the final question, the deepest paradox of all, is this: who am I? Imagine you are sitting still in a quiet room. No noise, no one calling your name, no mirrors, no memories to hold on to. There is only you and your breath. You listen to your breathing and watch the stream of thoughts moving through the mind. Images, memories, worries, dreams. Then, a question arises. Who is observing all of this? There is a you that thinks, worries, dreams. But there is also another you sitting backstage, quietly watching those thoughts drift by. When you are angry, a part of you still knows, I am angry. When you are sad, a part of you still stands outside and recognizes, I am sad. So, are you the anger, or the one observing the anger? Are you the sadness, or the one who knows there is sadness? This is the paradox of the self. The observer and the observed are both you. But if that is true, then which one is the real me? Imagine yourself as a mirror. Every emotion, thought, and memory that passes is like clouds reflected on the mirror's surface. But the mirror is not the clouds. The mirror only reflects. Perhaps the true I is not the shifting clouds of thought you usually identify with, but the quiet mirror behind them, the still background that is always there, no matter how much cloud cover there is. If so, the greatest paradox of selfhood is not that we have a self, but that we cannot grasp it. Every time you say, this is me, that moment has already passed. It has already become memory. It is no longer the you of right now. Every time you try to define yourself, you shrink yourself into a small frame, while your flow is far wider. You breathe in slowly, then breathe out. In that breath, you sense that the true I may not be found by thinking about it, but by looking directly into the silence that is observing everything. A nameless presence, without age, without boundaries. In that silence, something strange appears. Perhaps you are never the thoughts, the memories, or the roles you wear. You are the silent observer behind every experience. But then, at the very moment you recognize this, another question rises. If I am the observer, then who is observing the observer? The paradox of the self opens into infinity, like a circle with no end. Each time you try to touch the center, it moves back a step. Perhaps the truth is not in finding a final, solid core of me, but in realizing that the self is a game of the mind. The observer and the observed, in the end, dissolve into the same quiet. You sit still in that imagined room and let the question, who am I, ring in your heart without rushing toward an answer. Sometimes the value of a paradox is not in the solution, but in the stillness it brings when every question is allowed to fall away. Beyond the self, you are still in that quiet room. The question, who am I, echoes like a bell, then fades into space. You notice that each time the mind tries to give an answer, it immediately becomes a thought. And as you observe that thought, you find yourself outside it again. The circle keeps turning. You observe yourself, then you observe the one who observes. The paradox of the self is like a hallway lined with endless mirrors facing each other. You look in and see one reflection. Then that reflection is reflected again and again, extending without end. You search for the real image, but there is no stopping point. So which one is you? The first reflection? The thousandth? Or the empty space between the mirrors? As you exhale slowly, something becomes clear. Perhaps the question, who am I, does not need an answer. Any answer would only be a thought, a label, a frame. And what you are seeking does not live inside any frame. you realize that what we truly look for is not a self to cling to, but pure presence, the stillness that observes everything and belongs to no label. That presence is there when you breathe, when you look, when you are quiet. It does not need proof. It does not need a name. It simply is. In the moment you stop trying to seize me, you feel a lightness. You do not need to assert who you are, build a perfect image, or strain to protect a fragile ego. You only need to be present in each moment. When you eat, you only eat. When you walk, you only walk. When you breathe, you only breathe. In that simplicity, you discover freedom. The paradox of the self is not meant to confuse you. It is meant to dissolve the illusion that there is a fixed core you must defend. The harder you grasp for a self, the farther you move from the truth. When you let go, you touch something larger, the current of presence beyond the self. Think back to a time when you truly forgot yourself. Perhaps watching a crimson sunset, when your heart stopped analyzing and simply marveled. Perhaps listening to a piece of music so intently that the listener disappeared and only the sound remained. Perhaps looking into someone's eyes, and for a moment both I and you vanished, leaving only a pure connection. Strangely, those are the moments when you feel most alive. You see now, freedom is not constructing a strong, unchanging self. Freedom is daring to dissolve into that presence where there is no need to ask, "Who am I?" because every question has fallen away. You open your eyes, and the world around you is the same room, the same breath, the same light and sound. Yet something is different. It is not the world that has changed. It is your way of seeing, and in that seeing, everything becomes enough. The paradox of the self closes not with a solution, but with an invitation. Stop searching for an unchanging self. Be present, and let presence be the answer. Ending and beginning. You have traveled far, from the room of two boxes, where free will is challenged by a predictor, to the moment when time stops, where you felt the loneliness of absolute power. You wandered through the vision of the brain in a tank and doubted reality, then drifted with Theseus's ship and wondered whether the self remains when everything has changed. You trembled in the room of fear, then felt overwhelmed in the infinite hotel, where you learned to stop. You faced the pleasure machine and separated false happiness from the true. You entered the circus of endless options, then looked into the rearview mirror of regret. And at last, you sat in stillness to face the deepest paradox. The self-observer and observed, revealed as an endless play of the mind. All these paradoxes, though different, carry you to a common place, the fragility and vastness of being human. We are both finite and infinite. We crave certainty and are swept into uncertainty. We want to hold on, and yet we find peace only when we let go. Along the way, perhaps your heart trembled again and again, sometimes confused, sometimes moved, and sometimes lit by a small realization. That is the true meaning of paradoxes, not to hand you a final answer, but to open cracks in old convictions. Through those cracks, new light enters. You close your eyes gently, breathe in deeply, and breathe out slowly. In this breath, you do not need to define yourself, to grasp the world, or to resolve any paradox. You only need to be present, right now. You may forget many details of this 3-hour journey. You may forget the examples, the images, the theories. I hope you remember one thing. Life does not need to be tidy in order to be beautiful. You do not need to know exactly who you are in order to live. You do not need certainty about the future in order to keep walking. You do not need to erase fear or regret, because they are part of the river that carried you here. You only need to pause, take a breath, and feel this truth. You are alive, right now, in each breath, in each small, ordinary, everlasting moment. This, perhaps, is the end of the journey. Not an answer to every paradox, but a quiet space within you where every question can be set down, and only pure presence remains. You open your eyes, The world is still the same. The room, the light, the sounds. But something has shifted. It is not the world that changed. It is your gaze. And in that gaze, everything becomes enough. The 3-hour journey of paradoxes closes. But it is not a period. It is a door opening. So that from here you can walk on more settled, more awake, with a soft smile. I do not need to understand every paradox. I only need to live fully in the wonder of them. The rear view mirror. Imagine you are driving along an endless road. Ahead, the path stretches into the dark, where your headlights reach only a few short yards. Behind you, through the rear view mirror, lies the road you have already traveled. The bends, the turns, the potholes, the stretches of light and shadow. You know the rear view mirror is only for a glance, to remind you of where you have just been. Yet sometimes, you cannot pull your eyes away. You stare longer than you should, as though trying to retrieve something lost or to repair a turn already taken. And in that moment, you realize, this is the paradox of regret. Regret is a special kind of mirror. It does not only reflect the truth, it also clouds it with the mist of, what if? What if I had chosen a different road? What if I had spoken other words? What if I had been braver, more patient, or more silent? The mirror shows not only what happened, but also the scripts that never existed. And so you become stuck between two realms, the present you cannot change, and the future you cannot yet touch. Think of a time in your life when regret carved itself deep into your heart. Perhaps it was a love you let slip away, an opportunity you did not dare to take, or a mistake you wished you could undo. Your mind replayed that moment again and again, just like a driver staring at the rearview mirror and forgetting the car is still moving forward. And here lies the paradox. Regret both wounds us and proves that we have grown. Without growth, you would not have the depth to see your mistakes. Without love, you would not know what you had lost. Without taking risks, you would have nothing to regret. Regret, in its strange way, is the shadow of maturity stretching across the road of life. You draw in a deep breath. As you exhale, you look into the imagined rear-view mirror of your mind. The images of wrong turns and lost chances flicker by, like fading streaks of light. Your heart tightens, yet you also see this truth. It is through those regrets that you became the person you are now. Like an arrow of time, you can only fly forward. But the rearview mirror still hangs there, reminding you that the journey was not meaningless. It gives you lessons, painful but real, showing that every step left its mark. And if you are willing to learn, regret is no longer a prison. It becomes a map. You slowly close your eyes. In the dark, you see yourself still driving, the wind rushing through, the road stretching on. You know you cannot turn back, cannot alter the past. But you also know that without those curves, you would not be on this road today. A faint smile touches your lips. I once had regrets, which means I once truly lived. Learning to look into the rear view mirror. You are still in that imagined car. The long road spread out before you, the wind flowing through the window. The rear view mirror still hangs above, reflecting the flickering glow of memories. You know you cannot take it down. No one drives without looking back sometimes. But you also know that if you stare into it too long, an accident will follow. This is how regret works in life. It is necessary, for it reminds us of where we have been and how we have erred. But it is also dangerous if we let ourselves remain trapped there. The challenge is to use the mirror properly. Glance, acknowledge, then return to the road ahead. Think of one of your greatest regrets. Perhaps it was a job opportunity lost, a relationship that broke apart, a decision that cost you dearly. For days, even months, you were haunted by the question, what if I had done differently? But one day you realized, the past no longer waits for you. It has gone, like the cars disappearing behind the glass. The only thing still in your hands is the steering wheel of the present. From that moment, you began to understand. Regret is not for drowning in, but for learning from. It is like a small flame, hold it too close, and it burns you. Place it in a lantern, and it lights your path. Now imagine a strange rear-view mirror. Each time you look into it, instead of only seeing, if only, faint words appear. What did I learn? If you missed an opportunity, the lesson might be braver. If you hurt someone, the lesson might be, listen and be gentle. If you failed, the lesson might be, prepare better or accept your limits. Each regret, when seen through that question, transforms into treasure. It is no longer a chain that holds you back, but a compass pointing the way forward. You take in a slow breath, then release it. In that breath, you see the truth clearly. Time flows only one way. The arrow of time never turns back. To live forever in regret is like trying to drive against traffic, dangerous and hopeless. The only thing you can do is learn from the past, then return it to the mirror and set your eyes on the road ahead. You smile gently, for you understand now. Regret does not need to vanish. It only needs to be placed in the right place. Like the small rearview mirror, it reminds you that behind you lies a journey. But your eyes, your heart, and your hands belong to the road ahead, where the dawn still waits. And in that moment, you whisper to yourself, I cannot change what has passed, but I can use it to change the way I move forward. The paradox of regret, after all, is not that it weakens us, but that it gives us the chance to grow stronger. For only those who have been hurt by the past can truly value the present, and only those who have missed out know what it means to live fully. You return to the steering wheel in your hands. The rearview mirror still hangs above, but it no longer haunts you. It is only a small part of the journey, a reminder to remember, and then to keep moving on, knowing that the real road always lies ahead. The circus of choice. Imagine stepping into a vast fairground, where countless booths crowd together under dazzling lights. At one stall, dozens of brightly colored jams. At another, hundreds of clothes hanging down a long corridor, each with its own style. Then come electronics, household goods, books, and endless foods from around the world. Everywhere hangs the same sign: you have the right to choose. At first, you are delighted. How wonderful it feels to no longer be limited, to have everything open before your eyes. You believe that the more choices you have, the more free and happy you will be. But soon the excitement fades into something else: confusion, heaviness, and unease. You stand before the jam stall. 60 different kinds: strawberry, raspberry, orange, peach, mango, pear, blueberry. You want to try them all, but that is impossible. You must pick one. But the moment you reach for the strawberry jar, a voice in your head whispers, what if the orange is better? What if I regret not choosing the mango? And instead of enjoying the jam in your hand, you are haunted by the choices you left behind. This is the paradox of choice. We believe that more options bring more happiness. But in truth, more options can make us more miserable. Because as the number of choices increases, our satisfaction decreases. We stop savoring what we have and begin to worry about what we missed. In your mind, a circus begins. Clowns representing each option leap and dance, each one pulling you toward them. Choose me, I am better. No, choose me, I will bring true happiness. If you ignore me, you will regret it forever. And you, the unwilling spectator, sit in the middle of this circus, overwhelmed, exhausted, unsure which way to turn. You recall a famous study. When shoppers were shown 24 kinds of jam in a supermarket, many stopped to taste, but almost none bought. When only 6 kinds were displayed, purchases increased dramatically. Too many choices paralyze us. We fear choosing wrong, and even if we decide, we remain less satisfied, always imagining the ones we left behind. You inhale deeply, then exhale slowly. And in that breath you realize The paradox of choice does not live only in supermarkets or fairs. It seeps into every part of life. How many times have you scrolled through dozens of movies and ended up watching none? How many times have you skipped through hundreds of songs without listening fully to even one? How many times have you faced countless career paths and instead of feeling free, felt burdened? What we call the freedom of choice is not just a gift. It is also an invisible weight. It makes us constantly doubt our own decisions. It keeps us from being fully present in the moment. And sometimes, the price of having all options is losing the simple peace of being content. You pause in the imagined fairground, the lights around you blurring, and in that moment you see clearly. Freedom does not come from how many choices you have, but from the courage to choose one and live it fully. Simplify to go deep. You are still standing in the bright fairground, where countless booths glow with lights and call to you with endless possibilities. But after wandering for so long, your feet grow tired, your mind grows tangled, and the joy of freedom has turned into weariness. You suddenly see the paradox. Too much freedom can become a prison. When every possibility is open, you no longer know where to go. And while you think you are free to choose, you are actually trapped in anxiety about the choices you have not made. You stop before a small stall displaying only 3 fruits: an apple, a pear, and an orange. The vendor smiles quietly. No loud advertising. No pushy invitation. You feel relief wash over you. This time, when you reach for an apple, the choice feels simple and complete because you are no longer distracted by dozens of other possibilities. Less has become more. This is the lesson hidden in the paradox of choice. Happiness is not about having as many options as possible, but about knowing how to limit them so you can dive deep into an experience. When you reduce your options, you free your mind from the fear of, what if I missed something? When you choose less, you can live more deeply in what you chose. Think of your own life. Have you ever owned a closet stuffed with clothes, yet every morning spent hours wondering, I have nothing to wear? Meanwhile, someone else, with only a few outfits, chooses easily and steps out the door in peace. Abundance does not always equal sufficiency. In fact, it is limits that create space for focus. Or think of an artist. He may have thousands of colors at his disposal, but sometimes only black and white are enough to paint a masterpiece. Meaning lies not in the number of colors, but in the heart he pours into each stroke. In your mind, the noisy circus of choices fades. The lights blur, and all that remains is a small, quiet stall where you sit, pick one simple thing, and savor it fully. A crisp bite of apple, a warm sip of tea, a slow piece of music, and you understand. It is this simplicity that makes you feel whole. The paradox of choice is not meant to forbid choosing, but to remind us that choosing means both taking and letting go. Only when you dare to let 10 roads fall away do you truly step onto the one road left. Only when you silence dozens of voices do you finally hear the one sound that matters. And here, a philosophy of life opens. Freedom is not the ability to do everything. It is the courage to choose one thing and give yourself completely to it. That very choice transforms an ordinary moment into a meaningful one. That very resolve frees you from the spiral of regret and comparison. You breathe in, breathe out, and feel your mind grow lighter. The fairground stalls dissolve, leaving only a single narrow path ahead. You no longer need endless options. You only need one meaningful choice, and that is enough. True happiness and the price of truth. You have just left the room where the pleasure machine still stands silent and patient, like a temptation that never fades. And you keep asking yourself, why do we hesitate? Why does something within us resist when we think of living a guaranteed life of false happiness? The answer may lie in the very nature of being human. We do not only want comfort, we want truth. We want to know that our joy is the result of a real life, not just fake signals pumped into the brain. We want to believe that our tears fall for something real, not for an illusion programmed by someone else. Think of a flower. You can print its picture on paper. You can create a flawless, three-dimensional image. You can even simulate the fragrance when you touch it. But when you stand before a real flower, rooted in soil, rising under the sunlight, you know something is different. The fake flower can trick your senses, but it cannot replace existence itself. In the same way, false happiness can mimic feelings, but it cannot replace the deep comfort of knowing you have truly lived, truly struggled, truly loved. That comfort does not come from pleasure. It comes from meaning. And perhaps this is the very thing the machine can never reproduce. The sense that this life, however painful, is still yours. You recall a difficult memory, perhaps the time you failed at a project, or the time you lost someone you loved. You suffered. You despaired. In that moment, if given the chance, you might have chosen to erase those memories. But looking back, you realize it was those very experiences that made you stronger, that taught you about courage, about the fragility of life. False happiness could never give you those lessons. Here lies the paradox. Human beings need suffering in order for happiness to hold value. If joy is always easy, it loses its meaning. Like a song made only of high notes, without lows, it becomes flat. It is contrast that creates melody. It is darkness that makes light precious. And perhaps, deep within us, there is a desire greater than happiness itself. Authenticity. We want to live a real life, even if it is scarred, rather than a fake life wrapped in roses. We would rather walk on a rugged road than lie in a machine, drifting in a dream both beautiful and hollow. You inhale deeply, then exhale slowly. You see that this paradox does not force you to reject the machine, nor to accept it. It simply places you before a mirror, asking, what do you value more, comfort, or the truth of a life that is yours? And when you are honest with yourself, you discover the answer does not come from philosophy. It comes from the heart. The heart knows that one real embrace, even once, is worth more than 1,000 false ones. One real tear, even if painful, makes you live more truly than any number of fake smiles. And one real life, though filled with risk, is worth more than an endless dream. You smile, because now you understand. True happiness is not happiness without suffering. It is happiness built upon truth. And that truth is the treasure human beings long for, greater than any instant pleasure. The pleasure machine remains silent in imagination, waiting for you. But you know, perhaps, you would step away, back into the real world. Because it is in the cracks, in the hardships, that you find your own presence. And that presence, though imperfect, is what makes you feel truly alive. The Infinite Hotel. Imagine you are wandering lost in an unfamiliar city. Night has fallen, and the street lamps cast a soft golden glow onto the damp pavement after the rain. You look for a place to rest, but every hotel you pass displays the sign, no vacancy. You walk on in your weariness, your eyes heavy with fatigue, until you see a strange building rise at the end of the road. A towering hotel with a glowing neon sign that reads, Infinite Hotel, always room available. You step inside, surprised. The lobby is vast, elegant, and strangely quiet. The manager, an old man with silver hair and sparkling eyes, smiles and greets you. Welcome. This is the hotel with infinite rooms. No matter how many guests arrive, we always have space for everyone. You frown in confusion. Infinite rooms? If all the rooms are already full, how could there still be space? The old man chuckles kindly. It is very simple. If a new guest arrives, I simply ask each person to move from room number N to room number N+1. The one in room 1 moves to room 2. The one in room 2 moves to room 3, and so on. That leaves room number 1 free for you. Problem solved. You stop, astonished. It sounds absurd, yet strangely logical. An infinite hotel never runs out of rooms, even when full, because it can always rearrange itself to make new space. And not only for one person, the old man explains that if an infinite number of new guests were to arrive, he would simply ask everyone to move to the even-numbered rooms, leaving all the odd-numbered ones open. You are both amazed and overwhelmed. In the finite world, full means there is no more room. But here, full does not prevent more, and enough does not prevent extra. Here, the boundary between enough and not enough dissolves. You walk along a hallway that stretches endlessly, doors numbered 1, 2, 3, and continuing without end. The farther you go, the more you realize that this hotel is a metaphor for the human heart. We often think that once we are full, we have no space left for anything new. But in truth, our minds are like the infinite hotel. We can always shift, rearrange, and make room for something new to enter. You remember the times in your life when you said, "I cannot learn anything more. I cannot love anyone else. I cannot endure anything further." And yet, when life placed you in those trials, you discovered space. Space to learn more, to love more, to be more patient. Perhaps we are not as finite as we believe. And yet, the infinite hotel also reveals the opposite paradox. If there is always more room, will we ever feel that we have enough? A mind that always chases more may lose its peace. A person who always believes they can hold more, own more, achieve more, may never know what it feels like to be whole. You pause before the door marked number 1. A faint light reflects off the doorknob onto your fingers, and you realize the infinite hotel is not only about vast potential, it is also a reminder of the paradox of desire. When you are never full, you may also never stop. You close your eyes softly and release a long breath. Within that breath, you hear the echo of the hotel manager's voice. Human beings are finite in body, but infinite in their search. The tragedy is that if you do not know when to stop, infinity becomes a hallway with no exit. You open your eyes and see yourself still standing in that endless corridor, where the doors stretch forever into darkness. And you ask, in my life, when must I keep going to open a new room? And when must I stop, close the door, and finally feel that I have enough? The art of stopping. You still stand in the endless hallway of the infinite hotel. On either side, countless numbered doors stretch to the horizon of night. You know that if you wish, you could keep walking forever, opening forever, searching forever. Yet this very infinity begins to tire you, as though you are lost in a maze with no exit. The silver-haired manager, with his gentle smile, steps beside you. He speaks slowly, as though whispering straight into your mind. Human beings always think that opening one more door will bring them completion. But in infinity, there is no last door. What matters is not to open them all, but to stop at one and call it home. His words make you recall your own life's pursuits. How many times have you thought, just a little more, and I will feel complete? One more success, one more relationship, one more possession, one more experience. Yet as soon as you attained it, you longed for the next. It is just like this endless hallway. Every door opens to a new room, but no room makes you want to stay. This is the paradox of the infinite hotel. If you do not know when to stop, infinity turns into emptiness. You inhale deeply. Then imagine this. Instead of walking endlessly, you stop at one door. You place your hand on the handle, open it, and step inside. The room may be simple, not grand, perhaps only a small bed, a window letting in gentle light, a quiet space where you can sit and breathe. And in that moment, you realize something important. Wholeness does not come from the number of rooms, but from the ability to remain in one. In the same way, wholeness in life does not come from how much you have, but from how deeply you live with what you already hold. A modest meal can feel abundant if eaten with gratitude. An ordinary relationship can become treasure if you are fully present. An afternoon spent quietly watching the clouds drift can become eternal. If you are no longer running to chase something else, you begin to understand. Knowing when to stop is not abandoning infinity. It is choosing a stopping point within infinity. Infinity will always be there, tempting you, whispering, "There is more, there is more." But when you choose to say, "I stop here, I choose this moment," you transform infinity into fulfillment. The manager gently places his hand on your shoulder, his voice flowing like a lullaby. In the endless hallway, the wise are not those who walk the farthest, but those who find where to rest. To know how to stop is to truly know how to live. You close your eyes, inhale, and feel your own breath. In that moment, you are no longer lost among thousands of doors. You have only one small room, one bed, one steady rhythm of breathing, and that is enough. Thus, Hilbert's paradox becomes a simple yet profound lesson. Human beings are finite, but desire is infinite. The art of living is not conquering infinity, but choosing a small piece of it and calling it complete. You smile gently, because now the infinite hotel no longer overwhelms you. It is only a mirror reflecting the truth of the human heart. The more you chase, the more you feel empty. The more you know how to stop, the more you feel complete. The room of fear. Imagine you step into a dark room. The door behind you closes, and two other doors appear before you. On the left door, a clear inscription reads, "Safety." If you choose it, you will pass through a short hallway and return to the familiar, no danger, no surprises. A path that is certain, calm, and predictable. On the right door, a different sign hangs in the darkness, its letters slightly blurred as if melting into the shadows. Treasure and risk. If you enter there, you may find a great reward, but you may also meet danger, or even find nothing at all. That path is dim, full of twists and turns, and offers no guarantees. You stand on the threshold, your heartbeat quicker than usual, and you realize that the paradox begins with that very heartbeat. Fear is both the one who blocks you and the one who invites you. It makes you want to return to safety, and it also makes you endlessly curious about the other door. Fear is often seen as something to eliminate. In truth, it is like a red light on the dashboard, signaling that something important lies ahead. Without fear, you would not know where to pay attention. Without fear, choices would lose their meaning. It is fear that turns a choice into a significant moment. Think back to the times in your life when you have stood before two such doors: a job that is safe but monotonous, or a new opportunity full of risk. A relationship that is stable but cold, or a feeling that is uncertain but vibrant. A familiar land, or a journey into the unknown. And how did you choose? How many times did you return to safety, only to later wonder what lay behind the other door? This room reveals a paradox. We fear risk, and we fear too much safety. If we choose safety, we carry regret for what we did not explore. If we choose risk, we carry anxiety for what we might lose. Both choices have a price, and neither seems absolutely correct. You take a long breath in, listen to your own heartbeat, and exhale slowly. In the dark, you see that you are not only facing two doors, you are facing your understanding of fear itself. If you treat it as an enemy, you will try to run away. If you treat it as a guide, you will see it pointing toward the place that could help you grow. Imagine placing your hand on the safety door. Its surface is smooth, cold, and solid. Touching it brings relief and also a heavy stillness. Then you touch the treasure and risk door. Its surface is rough and uneven, with cracks like old scars. Yet when your hand rests there, a strange current runs through you, like an invitation. Step in and find out who you truly are. You realize that fear is not only an obstacle, it is the clearest mirror of who you are at the moment of choice. It shows what you value, how much you are willing to trade, and how ready you are to face uncertainty. Here is the paradox. If you always choose safety, you may miss the very moments that make you who you are. If you always choose risk, you may lose the stability that sustains what you love. Between these two extremes, fear becomes a compass not to tell you which direction to go, but to remind you that where fear is, there may also be meaning. You still stand in the middle of the room, your hands carrying the afterglow of cold and warmth from the two doors. And you understand that whichever door you choose, what matters is not the outcome, but the way you step in. Do you step in as an escape or as readiness? Do you step in with trembling or with the trust that whatever happens, you can still learn something from it? The room of fear is not here to judge you as right or wrong. It is here to ask, how ready are you to face yourself? Fear, signal, or sentence. You are still in that room, two doors before you. One marked safety, the other marked treasure and risk. Instead of choosing quickly, you listen to the fear rising in your chest. Your heart is pounding. Your hands are cold. Your breath is quick. Normally, we treat these signs as alarms, as something that stops us from moving forward. But if you look more closely, you will see that fear is only a signal, not a sentence. Fear does not appear to forbid you from going. It appears to remind you something important is ahead. It is like a gatekeeper standing at the threshold of change, asking, "Are you sure you want to cross?" In that way, fear is not an enemy. It can become an ally. It sharpens your attention, it makes you pause to consider, and it invites you to be more awake with every step. Think about the times in your life when you have moved through a specific fear. Perhaps it was the first time you stepped onto a stage, your voice unsteady and your hands damp with sweat. Perhaps it was when you confessed your feelings, nervous and excited, uncertain of the outcome. Perhaps it was when you left an old job to pursue something new. In each case, fear did not vanish. It remained, but you walked with it. And after you crossed that threshold, you realized you had grown more confident and more alive. Here is the paradox. We often think that to live bravely, we must eliminate fear. In truth, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward while still trembling. Fear is not a boulder in the road. It is a sign that says, "This road matters." Without it, we would never notice which moments deserve our whole heart. Try changing the way you speak about fear. Instead of, "I am afraid of failure," say, "I am standing before an opportunity big enough to make me tremble." Instead of, "I am afraid of rejection," say, "I am about to open my heart enough that a rejection could hurt me." With that shift, fear changes from a blocker into a mirror that shows what you truly desire. You breathe in, then breathe out slowly, and you notice that fear is like the darkness in this room. If you treat it as an enemy, you will fight it and feel it covering you like a weight. If you treat it as a space where light can appear, it becomes the backdrop that makes the rays of light stand out more clearly. Fear is the background upon which courage can be seen. In the quiet, you place a hand on your chest, where your heartbeat is drumming. You whisper to yourself, "I hear you, fear. I do not need you to disappear. I only need you to come with me." In that moment, the heartbeat is no longer a threat. It becomes the soundtrack for your next step. The room of fear does not force you to choose a door. It simply invites you to recognize that whenever you face a significant decision, fear will appear. And instead of running away, you can smile, place your hand on its shoulder, and walk forward. Because the paradox is this: the greater the fear, the more meaningful the reward. Without fear, victory loses its value. Without trembling, courage does not need a name. You look back at the two doors. Now they no longer seem as threatening as before. Whichever door you choose, you know you will walk with a new ally, fear, transformed into a signal. And that companionship is the very first treasure that this room has given you. The self as a flow. If the Ship of Theseus no longer holds any original planks, but we still call it by its old name, then where does its identity really lie? The answer may surprise you. Identity rests in the story people tell about it. We do not need the original wood to believe it is the same ship. We only need the story that ties past to present. And what about you? The I you protect, boast about, and sometimes fear will shatter, is in truth only a story. Your body changes, your memories change, your thoughts and beliefs change, yet you thread them together with a narrative. I am still me. The self is not an object. It is a self-telling process. Think of a journal. Each page is a different day, a different version of you. The writer yesterday may be sorrowful, while the writer today is full of hope. If you read only one page, they seem like different people. But if you read the entire journal, you see they all contribute to one continuous story. Your identity is like that too. It does not lie in any unchanging moment, but in the unfolding. When you understand this, a philosophical door opens. You no longer need to cling to, I must always be this way, because the I you cling to has already flowed on. The you of today is just one stretch along the river, and that is not frightening. On the contrary, it is liberating, because if the self is only a process, then you always have the chance to rewrite the story of who you wish to become. Yet here another paradox appears. If you are always changing, then what is the center we rely on? Is there some unchanging core of self? Or is everything only shifting layers of waves? Certain Eastern philosophies, such as Buddhism, say that such a core does not exist. They call it non-self. The self is only a collection of body, mind, emotions, memories, and habits. There is no hidden owner standing behind them all. At first, this sounds frightening, but it carries a quiet comfort. Because if there is no fixed self, then you are not imprisoned by the mistakes of your past. You can change, and change itself is your nature. Like the Ship of Theseus, you do not need the original wood to continue the journey. It is precisely the act of renewal that lets you sail further. Think of the times you have said, I am not that kind of person. Yet one day, you acted differently, lived differently, believed in something else. That statement was only your attempt to hold on to an old version already gone. The self is not a stone statue. It is a river. And you, instead of trying to carve it still, can learn to swim in its flow. When you sit quietly and listen to your breathing, you notice something. With every inhale and every exhale, you have already changed a little. With the inhale, you take in new oxygen. With the exhale, you release the old air. Even in your stillest moments, you are changing. And the wonder is that this change does not erase you. It is you. The paradox of the Ship of Theseus is not here to confuse, but to remind us of this truth. The self is not permanent. So instead of clinging to an image of who I am, you can be open to who I am becoming. Instead of fearing loss, you can see every change as a chance for rebirth. And perhaps this is the deepest message. The self is a story that is never complete. Each day you write another chapter. Each new memory is another plank replaced. And meaning does not lie in keeping every plank intact, but in daring to move forward, daring to keep telling the story. You gently close your eyes, inhale, then exhale slowly. In that moment, you feel lighter, as if you have just set down an invisible weight. Because you understand, you do not need to be me forever. You only need to be the flowing current and learn to live fully within each turn of its river. The brain in a vat, when reality trembles. Imagine one morning you wake up. Everything feels familiar. Sunlight filters through the curtain. Birds sing faintly outside the window, and your hand is still warm from a long night's sleep. You wash your face, take a sip of cool water, and clearly feel the refreshing sweetness flowing down your throat. Everything is so natural that you have no reason to doubt it. But then, a thought drifts by like a thin breeze. What proves that everything I am experiencing is real? You stop and look at the glass of water in your hand. You know it is cool, you know it is clear, You know it quenches your thirst. But what does knowing mean here? Could it simply be a series of electrical signals racing through your brain, decoded by your nervous system into images, flavors, and sensations? If so, what guarantees that these signals are not being fed into your brain by a giant computer, while your brain is floating in some artificial tank? This is the famous thought experiment called the brain in a vat. Imagine that you have no body, no external world. You are only a brain kept alive by wires and chemicals, while every experience, light, sound, smell, touch, is programmed by a supercomputer and streamed directly into your nervous system. In such a scenario, you would never be able to tell the difference between true reality and simulation, which means that right now, as you hear these words, as you feel your heartbeat, as you think you are sitting in a familiar room, everything could simply be a flawless performance of data, and you would have no evidence to prove otherwise. That thought makes you shiver, because if it were true, then not only the table, the chair, the sky, and the ground are illusions, but so are your memories. The childhood you believed in, the days in the classroom, the falls in the schoolyard, the smiles of your parents, these too could be preloaded data. Even the times you doubted, resisted, or thought, this must be real, even that certainty could itself be a programmed signal. The paradox of the brain in a vat recalls the question Descartes posed centuries ago. Could there be an all-powerful demon deceiving all of our senses? And he found only one firm ground to stand on. I think, therefore I am. Yet even that phrase, when placed in the context of the brain in the vat, unsettles us. If all is simulation, then is that thinking itself just a line of computer code? And if so, then who exactly is the I? You close your eyes and take a deep breath. Imagine that everything you see, hear, and touch is only a dream produced by some system. Perhaps outside there is no sky, no city, no universe. Perhaps there is only you, or more precisely, only your brain, floating in a cold tank of fluid, connected to millions of wires. The entire world you believe to be real is nothing more than a projection on the screen of your mind. Unease rises. If there is no way to prove you are not living inside a simulation, then what do all your efforts, struggles, and searches for truth amount to? Are we chasing a shadow that we can never grasp? Yet this paradox does more than sow doubt. It also offers a shift in perspective. Even if everything is simulated, your feelings are still real to you. When you laugh, joy still spreads in your chest. When you cry, tears still taste salty on your lips. When you love, your heart still trembles. And if you cannot distinguish between real and fake, then how important is that distinction anyway? You open your eyes. The room you are in feels quieter, as though it is watching you from afar. And you softly ask yourself, if everything is only a play staged inside my brain, then what truly matters, the essence of the world, or the way I experience it? Living meaningfully in a world that might be fake. You have just left behind the vision of the brain in the vat, but its echo lingers, like a gray cloud drifting in your mind. The thought that everything might be a simulation shakes your heart. Because if there is no way to prove the world is real, then are all your efforts, sufferings, and hopes nothing more than illusions? If that is so, what is left to hold on to? What is left to call meaningful? In truth, this paradox does not merely trap us in skepticism. It opens another door, another way of seeing. If you can never distinguish true from false, you have two choices. Either treat everything as meaningless, or treat everything as valuable, regardless of its foundation. Think about a dream. In a dream, you can run, laugh, cry, and feel pain. While dreaming, every emotion is so real that you never doubt it. Only when you wake up do you say, "Oh, that was only a dream." Yet during the dream, fear still makes you sweat, and joy still makes you smile. So where does the reality of the experience lie? It does not lie in any objective foundation, but in the intensity of your own feeling. If this world is also a programmed dream, then the dream still matters because you are living it. You still love, you still learn, you still find comfort when someone holds your hand. Perhaps the important question is not, is this real? But am I living fully within this experience? Think back to the moments that have passed. The time you sat beside your best friend and laughed until your stomach hurt. The time you watched a fiery sunset and fell silent in awe. The time you stumbled, hurt, and then rose stronger. Even if all of it was simulation, the feelings you had were real. No virtual machine can erase the trembling you experienced. On a deeper level, this paradox suggests that meaning does not depend on the absolute nature of reality. It depends on how you are present within it. If you live shallowly, even a real world feels empty. If you live fully, even a fake world is full of light. A modern philosopher once said, "Even if I am not sure the world is real, I am sure that I am feeling." And that feeling is the foundation upon which we build meaning. When you love, that love is real within you. When you hurt, that pain is real within you. Reality may be doubted, but experience cannot be denied. You inhale softly, then exhale, letting the idea sink into your chest. Perhaps you are in a tank. Perhaps you are in a vast dream. Perhaps you are only data in a mighty computer. But none of that erases the value of feeling grateful for a warm morning or cherishing a gentle word, because that very act of cherishing is the only truth you can hold. The brain in a vat paradox does not hand you a final answer about the nature of the world, but it does offer you a different gift, a way to live. It whispers, do not worry so much about whether the world is real. Let your heart decide what is real in each moment you live. And so, when you look again at the room around you, nothing is quite the same. The table is not just a table. It is where you once wrote important words. The chair is not just a chair. It is where you sat for hours, listening, learning, reflecting. The friend you are about to meet is not just a figure. They are a mirror reflecting your emotions. Whether or not the world is simulated, it still has meaning because you are living in it right now. You smile gently and whisper to yourself, I am not sure what is real, but I am sure that I am feeling. And for me, that is enough. When time stops, if the first paradox places you before the question of whether freedom is real or only an illusion already predicted, then the second paradox leads you onto a different stage, time. Imagine that one morning you open your eyes, and instead of the usual sound of your alarm, you hear absolute silence. You step out of bed and notice the hands of the wall clock frozen at a single unmoving moment. You look out the window and see leaves hanging mid-fall, suspended in the air as if held by an invisible hand. People on the street stand still, one of them holding a coffee cup that has not yet reached the lips. A small bird is outstretched in the sky, motionless like a living statue. Everything, from sound to motion to the familiar heartbeat of the world, has stopped. Only you still move, still think, still breathe. Time has halted for everyone except you. At first, this feels like a miracle that grants absolute power. You can walk across the city, touch anything, and witness every secret without being discovered. You can take anything, change anything, and face no immediate consequences. It is boundless freedom, the kind that human beings have always longed for since ancient times. To slip free of the clock's grip and stand outside the laws of the universe. But then, the long silence begins to change. As you walk down an empty street, the sound of your own footsteps becomes the only noise, echoing so loudly that it feels out of place. When you look at the faces that have stopped, they appear like empty masks. No one reacts, no one answers, and no eyes reflect your existence. Slowly, a strange loneliness tightens around your chest. Imagine having an entire lifetime to live in this frozen world. You could visit every library and read every book, but when you look up, there is no one to share what you have just learned. You could taste every dish and take every treasure, but flavor fades when there is no friend's gaze or a loved one's smile. You could touch someone's hand, but that hand will never move and will never hold yours in return. You begin to realize that absolute power does not necessarily bring happiness. It only exposes a simple truth. Happiness is not about how many things you can do. It is about who is there to do them with you, who is there to truly see you. A world with time stopped reveals a paradox. We often wish for more time. We wish to switch off the clock to escape stress and responsibility. Yet if time really stopped, the world would become a giant glass box in which we are utterly alone. We think we fear not having enough time, but perhaps what we fear more is the river of time rushing on without anyone flowing with us. Try pausing for a moment right now. Close your eyes, take a deep breath in, and imagine everything around you. The chair you are sitting on, the sounds outside your window, the pulse of the city suddenly stopping. You still breathe. You still think, but beyond you, nothing moves. In that silence, ask yourself, am I still myself if everything around me is motionless? You may feel a shiver, because you realize that the continuous movement of all things is what defines your existence. You are a person who walks, because there is a road spreading out before you. You speak and laugh, because there is someone to listen and answer. You are a small current, because you merge with the greater flow of the world. When that river freezes, you no longer know who you are. And so the second paradox speaks softly. Absolute freedom, when cut off from connection with others, becomes a kind of prison. In that moment, you finally understand. We do not truly long for time to stop. We long for meaningful moments, for the times when we are seen and we exist together with someone. Sometimes what we need is not more time, but the courage to be fully present in each small beat of time that is passing through us. Morality in a frozen world. Imagine it more closely. In a world where everyone is still and every gaze is fixed, you are the only one who can move. You could step into a luxury store and take anything with no one to stop you. You could slip into a bank and carry off piles of gold and silver without being detected. You could enter someone's home, open their journals, and look into secrets that no one would normally allow. You could even change the order of an entire city, drag people from one place to another, write messages on the walls, or place strange objects in their hands so that when time flows again, they will stare in confusion and ask what just happened. Absolute power unfolds before you, and the question rings out, what will you do when no one is watching and no rule binds you? At first, many people might laugh and say, of course I would take all the riches. I would satisfy every forbidden desire. But if you imagine long enough, you realize that this boundless freedom is actually a test of human morality. When there is no punishment and when actions leave no trace, your behavior finally reflects what you truly believe. A philosopher once said, real morality is what you do when no one is watching. In this frozen world, all of humanity stands still, and only you remain. That means there is no longer anyone to watch you. Who are you then? If you choose to bend every rule and use your power to gratify the self, that may not make you a villain. It may simply reveal a truth. The deepest part of you is driven more by desire than by conviction. On the other hand, if you choose only to look, only to observe, and to walk through this silent world without interfering, perhaps you are telling yourself, I exist not only to possess, but to accompany. Here arises the paradox. When no one bears witness, does morality still exist? If you take something in a frozen world, and no one knows, no one is harmed, and no one judges, is it still wrong? Or does the wrongness live inside your own feeling when you realize you have betrayed something invisible? Think back to times in your life when you were alone. No one was overseeing you. No one was reminding you. What you did in that darkness, keeping your promise to yourself, or quietly breaking it, often decided who you believed you were. Because in truth, even without other people, you still have one inescapable witness: yourself. So the frozen world is a grand metaphor. It does not only ask, what would you do with absolute power? It also asks, how will you live with yourself afterward? If you pass through door after door, take everything, intervene in every life, and when time flows again, you see bewildered faces and no one knows you were the cause, will you sleep easily, or will you feel estranged from your own self? Conversely, if you walk through that world without taking anything, if you only touch the unmoving shoulder of someone you love, if you only smile at the frozen eyes of a child, if you simply watch a leaf forever suspended midfall, you may feel a different freedom. Freedom from temptation. Freedom from the urge to control. Perhaps that is the highest level of freedom a human being can reach. In the silence, you begin to understand. The world does not need to freeze for you to face this paradox. Every day you already have no one is watching moments. When you are alone with a screen. When you stand before a small choice that no one will notice. Those anonymous moments reveal your nature most clearly. The paradox of time freeze ends with a quiet mirror. It does not give you a right or wrong answer. It asks you one question. When everything stops and only you move, what will you do? And do you dare to call that person yourself? The room of two boxes. If at this very moment there was a machine that already knew exactly what you would do, then would your choice still be your own? Imagine walking into a white room, so empty that even the sound of your own footsteps echoes back like the beating of a drum inside your chest. In the very center of the room stands a dark wooden table, its polished surface catching the dim light. On top of the table sit two boxes. One of them is transparent, and inside you can clearly see a fixed amount of money, 1,000 units, shimmering like glass beads. The other box is opaque, sealed tight, giving away no hint of whether it is completely empty or hiding a treasure many times greater. The experimenter, with a steady and calm voice, as soft as the breeze, begins to speak. You only have two choices. You can take both boxes, or you can take only the opaque box. But remember this: before you stepped in here, a prediction machine, a keen observer, has already foretold your choice. If it predicted that you would take only the opaque box, then it placed a huge amount of money inside. If it predicted that you would take both, then the opaque box will be empty, and it is almost never wrong. You stand there, your hands trembling ever so slightly. The setup sounds simple, yet its simplicity twists deep into your mind like a maze with no exit. You look at the transparent box, 1,000 units guaranteed, safe, right in front of you. Then you turn toward the opaque one. It may be empty, but it may also hold a fortune that could change your life forever. Your reasoning begins to stir. One part of you whispers, if I take both, at the very least I will still have the 1,000. And if the opaque box happens to be full, then I will win big and still keep the smaller safety net. Why let that slip away? Yet another voice cuts in, colder. If the predictor is almost never wrong, then your thought of grabbing both was already known. And if that is the case, the opaque box must be empty, which means that by trying to take both, you end up with only one. You begin to realize this is no longer a simple matter of adding and subtracting. It is a question about the very nature of freedom. Are you truly choosing in this moment? Or are you simply walking down a path already drawn by the prediction? Every thought you have, every tiny tremble in your palms, are they already written in a script? You try closing your eyes. Behind your eyelids, you see two parallel roads. One road leads you to the decision of taking both boxes, a mix of safety and pragmatic cleverness. The other road leads you to the opaque box alone, a leap into an abyss whose bottom you cannot see. Both roads appear reasonable. Both carry their own weight. But in the end, is your reasonableness truly yours? or only a reflection of the machine's calculation? As you hesitate, the experimenter speaks again, this time as though sweeping away the mist, clouding your mind. There is no absolutely correct choice. There is only the portrait of yourself that your choice will paint. What do you want it to say about you? A wave of silence washes over you. You suddenly recall the many times in your life when you faced difficult decisions. Choosing a stable job or chasing a passion. Holding on to a safe relationship or leaving to find freedom. Staying silent or speaking the truth. In those moments, you too felt as if there was a predictor inside your head, already knowing what you would do, and you simply followed the familiar path. Yet sometimes, just sometimes, you strayed from that prediction, and those very moments of surprise were the ones that truly made you grow. You open your eyes. The two boxes still sit there, unmoving, but something within you has shifted. You begin to realize that this experiment is not really about money. It is a mirror reflecting how you face the crossroads of life. Do you trust in calculated safety, or do you trust in the power of uncertain faith? You take a deep breath, hold it, then release it slowly, as if letting the question linger in the air without needing an answer. Because sometimes the value of a paradox does not lie in solving it, but in revealing the cracks in the beliefs you thought were unshakable. And through those cracks, a new light enters, gentle, but enough to change you. Inside that white room, you have not yet made your decision. But the truth is, you are already different from the person who first stepped in. And perhaps that is the very first reward of this experiment. The predictor within you, you still stand there, in the white room with the two boxes. But this time, instead of staring at the money, you look deeper into the process of thought unfolding in your mind. Strangely enough, the more you focus, the more you realize that a part of you already knows what you will do before your reasoning even catches up. Many studies in neuroscience have shown that when humans make decisions, the brain creates signals preparing for action several seconds before the moment we feel that we decided. In other words, free will may be only a mask appearing last, covering the neural circuits that had already made the choice silently. So then, are you really choosing, or are you simply telling a story about a decision already programmed? The predictor in this experiment is not only an outside machine. It is also your habits, the kind of predictor that knows you almost perfectly. When you feel sad, you reach for your phone and scroll aimlessly. When you are stressed, you look for your usual snacks. When you have two choices, you lean toward the safer path. Your habits know which way you will turn, even before you think you are considering it. They are your most faithful predictor, except that they live inside your very bones. Think back. How many times have you sworn that this time you would act differently, yet still ended up repeating the exact same pattern? A quarrel you promised to handle calmly, only to release bitter words again. A morning you swore you would rise early, only to hit snooze and fall back asleep. A new opportunity you thought you would seize, only to retreat to old safety. Every one of those moments, was it not the predictor inside you smiling and saying, "I already knew, this time is no different"? And here lies the paradox. The more we believe we are free, the more easily our habits control us. Because false freedom gives us the illusion that every choice is new. In truth, they are only refined copies of earlier choices, wrapped in fresh justifications. I choose this job because it is stable. But have you not always chosen stability? I choose silence to avoid conflict. But has that silence not long been your path? What we call free choice is often only repetition dressed in new clothing. You inhale deeply, then exhale, and recognize the greatest paradox of free will. If you always act according to prediction, you are not truly free. But if you act against the prediction, is that freedom? Or is it only another way of proving the prediction correct, that you will always try to prove you are different? Here, freedom becomes a closed loop. Whatever you do, the predictor can still fit it into its calculations. The more you struggle, the tighter the ropes feel. And yet, there is a small gap. It does not lie in choosing the transparent or the opaque box. It does not lie in following or resisting your habits. That gap lies in the moment of observing. When you begin to see the predictive mechanism within yourself clearly, you are no longer fully identified with it. You become the observer, the silent witness standing outside the script. And sometimes, just that one instant is enough to change the path. Imagine the white room once again. This time, you do not rush to reach for a box. You simply stand still, noticing the urge rising within you to choose quickly and be done. You see your heart race, your breath quicken, your brain scrambling for reasons. Yet you do not act. You only observe, like someone watching themselves being hypnotized. And in that very act of observing, however small, a different kind of freedom opens the freedom not to react immediately. That is also the only freedom the predictor cannot predict. It does not lie in which box you pick. It lies in how you show up before you pick. One slower breath, one paused reaction, one moment of realizing you are being guided, that is, the crack through which light enters. You loosen your shoulders slightly, and in that silence, you see your reflection across countless everyday choices. Next time you reach for your phone without thinking, you may slow down half a beat and realize, this is the predictor in me. Next time you start repeating a familiar answer to avoid trouble, you may hold your silence for one more second and recognize, this is the old path at work. And in that recognition, you may finally have the chance to choose differently, not to rebel, but to be free. When you open your eyes, the white room is still quiet. The two boxes still on the table, but they no longer carry the same weight. Because you have understood, this game was never really about the boxes. It was about the predictor inside you, and whether you notice its whisper behind every choice. And so, the very first paradox of this journey closes, not with a clear decision, but with a subtle yet powerful reminder. You do not need to know for sure which box holds the prize. The real prize is the moment you see yourself being predicted and smile.